Hello and welcome to television's most authoritative maritime show, Nimasa This Week. My name is Retiola Doyle. Now on today's edition, our emphasis will be on human capacity building of operatives within the maritime industry. After the break, we'll be bringing you a very short prologue to this week's topic.
One of the principal mandates of the Nigerian Maritime Administration Safety Agency Nimasa is the training and certification of seafarers. This is in view of the importance attached by government to the quality of personnel who are expected to drive the implementation of the cabotage law in advancement of Nigeria's local shipping industry. The establishment of Nimasa in 2006 coincided with a period when there was a global acknowledgement of an alarming reduction in the numbers of certified and able seafarers worldwide. Alive to its responsibilities right from inception, Nimasa promptly answered the clarion call by opening a window of collaboration with the 36 state governments across the country geared towards the training of local seafarers. This collaborative initiative was named the National Seafarers Development Program, NSDP.
Welcome back to our Nimasa This Week studios. Now our field correspondent, Charles Ahauku, visited Nimasa headquarters to speak to the relevant officials at the agency driving the Human Capacity Building Initiative.
The dogged pursuit of this objective by the agency since its inception in 2006 belies the importance attached to it by government. In the words of the Executive Director for Maritime Labour and Cabotage at Nimasa, Ibrahim Zailani, the National Seafarers Development Program is the vehicle through which Nimasa seeks to satisfy the need for capable, well-trained and professional seafarers in Nigeria's maritime industry.
The human element in the maritime sector is very critical because no matter how sophisticated a ship is, it must be manned by the human being, and it must also be maintained by the human being. And at the same time, the ship must also be serviced by the human being. So, taking a cue from that, you realize that if a ship sails, it is being controlled by the human being. If the engine of the ship is working, it's being maintained also by the human being. So also services provided on board the vessel. So therefore, the human element in the maritime sector is very, very, very critical. That is why Nimasa is placing emphasis on human capacity development.
The adoption of the NSDP program by Nimasa seemed to have been a prompt response by the agency to a global alert towards an increasing reduction in the numbers of certified and able seafarers. Director Maritime Labour Services at Nimasa, A.I. Baba, goes down memory lane to trace the origin of the NSDP program.
2006, the then Joint Maritime Labour Industrial Council, or JOMALIC, did a gap analysis, of which I was in charge then. We did a gap analysis and we realized that the cabotage law was coming into force. And in Nigeria, we needed between 30 to 40,000 seafarers to operate on the cabotage scheme of Nigeria. But we noticed that we have less than 5% of our manpower requirement, in which case all the others had to be given a waiver in line with the Cabotage Act. So we now thought that there is need for us to try and fill in those gaps because the waiver cannot be forever. We have to create jobs for Nigerian seafarers.
Nimasa introduced the National Seafarers Development Program as an intervention program because with the dissolution of the Nigerian National Shipping Line, there was a break in the training of seafarers, a break of about 16 years. And you'll find that most of our master mariners today are aging. The average age of a master mariner today in Nigeria is 60 years. You can imagine sending a 60-year-old to man a ship. Definitely the man will be sleeping.
The National Seafarers Development Program had since its inception in 2008 undergone a number of changes, evolving first from a counterpart funding program with the 36 state governments in the country to one that sought to accommodate the participation of individuals and corporate organizations in the sponsorship of trainee seafarers. The latest window, which involves the 100% sponsorship of seafarers training by Nimasa, is an ongoing project in selected maritime academies and institutes in various parts of the world, including India, the United Kingdom and Egypt. Here is the Nimasa Assistant Director for the NSDP program.
We're using the Amet University. The Amet University has a synergy with Glasgow College of Nautical Science in Scotland and the Newcastle Southern Tide University in Newcastle. What happens is that they spend a year in Amet University, Chennai, India, for their foundation. There they are groomed for the degree course, which after a year, with a good performance, they now proceed to the United Kingdom, either going to the Newcastle, Southern Tide University, Newcastle, or the Glasgow College of Nautical Sciences. We also have the Arab Academy for Technical and Maritime Transport in Alexandria, Egypt. There they have the full program. It's a 4-year program, and they also provide sea time. But those in the United Kingdom, we have to source for sea time for them.
Irrespective of the success already recorded by the overseas training of Nigerian seafarers by Nimasa, the current thinking within the agency, however, seems to favor the establishment of partnerships with selected Nigerian universities for the training of indigenous seafarers. Nimasa's Director General Ziakede Patrick Akbobolokemi here speaks on the subject, followed by the Special Assistant to the DG, Dr. Presi Proctor Jumbo.
That the maritime sector alone, take oil and gas away, is enough to feed this country. And if we have these potentials, why must we sit and be waiting? Why is it that in all the universities across Nigeria, we don't have faculties or institutes of maritime studies when we are already a blessed maritime country? It is in that spirit the National Assembly approved for the establishment of this program in this university. In the next 4, 5 years, 6, 7 years, we should see marine engineers, even if they have a marine engineering department, it should intensify the efforts. More graduates should come, qualitative ones, in numbers, in quantity and in quality. We want to see that in the next few years, we should see naval architects. It's embarrassing that a country as big as Nigeria, we don't have naval architects. We send our ships outside this country, we build our ships outside this country, even when the issues are domestic in nature, even when they are to operate in our domestic trade. You can imagine the capital flight that is occasioned. You can imagine the job loss. You can imagine the damage that is done to our economy. It is in this spirit we are of the view that we must make conscious and deliberate efforts in establishing maritime institutes in universities across Nigeria, sustain them, develop them, finance them, so that tomorrow, sometime, somewhere, a legacy can be created.
Training people abroad, it's very capital intensive. It's highly capital intensive. So if we can establish maritime institutions in the country, it would be better for us. So in the meantime, we are about establishing one maritime university, one maritime science and technical college, and 4 institutes of maritime studies in 4 already established universities in the country. We are trying to interface with the universities simply because there are a lot of expertise in our various universities which we have not tapped. So by the establishment of these institutes in the university, definitely there will be the gap between academia and the industry will be bridged.
Deputy Director, Maritime Capacity Building at Nimasa, Ibrahim Jibril, speaks more on the prospects of the agency's 100% sponsorship of trainee seafarers.
At the initial stage, we decided that we were going to train labor to meet up with our requirements because we are in their need of maritime labor, seafaring labor, to meet up with the cabotage regime. So we embarked on the training in such a manner that Nigerian youths were selected, both girls and boys selected, to be trained in accredited maritime institutions abroad. There is a latest window that you are asking about now. This latest window has provided for Nimasa to go to the states, conduct entrance examinations, and select candidates who will be trained 100% by Nimasa. This 100% funding by Nimasa is going to see to the training of marine engineers, navigators, and naval architects in these 3 areas. And they will be taken to the same accredited institutions abroad and for training.
The institutions, in partnership with the Nimasa NSDP program for the establishment of Maritime Institutes, include the University of Lagos, University of Nigeria Nsukka, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida University in Lapai, Niger State, and the Niger Delta University at Wilberforce Island, Amasoma, Bayelsa State. Besides the partnering universities, Nimasa will also fund the establishment of a maritime university at Okerenkoko, as well as the Maritime Science and Technical College at Okoloba, both in Delta State. Furthermore, on behalf of Nigeria, Nimasa has in recent times become signatory to a number of treaties, a memoranda of understanding with similar agencies within and outside the West African sub-region, the main thrust of such agreements and conventions being the exchange of ideas and manpower development. The first set of graduates of Nimasa's National Seafarers Development Program (NSDP) is expected to join the mainstream by the end of this year, or latest by the middle of 2013.
Now, one thing is clear. Nimasa is 100% committed to empowering Nigerian youths who are interested in pursuing a career in the maritime industry. Now, after the break, we will be bringing you the news update on Nimasa this week. You're welcome to the news update on Nimasa this week. First up is our report on a visit by the members of the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria to the DG of Nimasa.
A delegation of executive members of the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria, led by their president, Comrade Anthony Mped Emmanuel, paid a courtesy call on the Director General of Nimasa at the Burma Road, Apapa headquarters of the agency. As is usual with union leaders, Comrade Anthony Emmanuel came with a shopping list of demands that he wanted addressed by Nimasa.
And we have a lot of issues. Here we talk about training of seafarers on the STCW and tanker formalization. We have commencement of task force to monitor compliance to cabotage law by operators, illegal crewing and placement of seafarers on board vessels, the necessary issuance of waiver by Nimasa at the expense of seafarers, issuance of medical certificate for seafarers should be free, issuance of the charge book for seafarers. Then there are other issues too. They talk about issue of JTFs for Nimasa security on waterways.
In his response, the Director General of Nimasa, Mr. Ziakede Patrick Akpobulokeme, took time to address the issue of waivers as they affect cabotage operations.
So, the issue of waivers is something that we want to look into very, very urgent as part of the recommendations or the things we want to do. And because if Nigerians can do a job and you take foreigners, I'm not entering the situation, not every day, thousands of people will call me for jobs. The only way we can create this job is to use the cabotage. Then whether there is so much pressure or not, no less than 60% of whoever that is going to be employed will be based on merit. So that the poor people's children that don't know any person, don't go father, one day they will have hope that this country, there is a source of hope somewhere. And that was why I did that. So that is that. Now, for the implementation of some of these things, I'm very happy to let you know that we have just received, in fact, 4 patrol boats, newly built, the state-of-the-art boats have just arrived in Nigeria for Nimasa. Another 8 boat ocean will be ones that will stay in the offshore, and another 8 is going to come in September. Why I'm radically going into this is that when some days I'll just come to my office, I will wear overall, I will be going from one company to the other to enforce capital.
At the end of the visit, the Director General gave out souvenirs to the visiting unionists.
And finally, we have a report on a very crucial maritime workshop that took place in Nigeria recently.
A workshop for heads of maritime administrations in what is known as the Abuja MOU region held recently in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital. The workshop was attended by relevant ministers, heads of maritime administration, and stakeholders from West and Central Africa, as well as representatives from the International Maritime Organization, IMO. The Abuja MOU came into existence 13 years ago when in October 1999, 19 countries in the West and Central African sub-region signed a Memorandum of Understanding on Port State Control in Abuja. The Abuja MOU is one of 9 such regional MOUs in the world. The Executive Secretary of the Abuja MOU, Mrs. Mfon Usoro, in her welcome address expressed pleasure at the turnout and quality of participants at the workshop.
We are pleased to see the great turnout at very high level participants at this workshop, which comprises of Director Generals and the senior experts. The program, as you will note, is designed for policymakers and top experts who advise their various governments on maritime matters, especially on port and flag state obligations. Mindful that maritime administrations of several member states have witnessed a turnover of personnel over the years, the content of the workshop elaborates on the basic principles and issues on port state obligations of member states as state parties to the relevant international maritime conventions. And of course, we talk about the qualifications of port state control officers and port state control procedures generally. We at the Secretariat look forward to all the sessions, but particularly the group exercise and discussions on the 2, where you will tell us your expectations of the Secretariat and how we can serve you better.
She was also mindful to thank some institutions that contributed to the successful hosting of the workshop in Uyo.
The Secretariat of Abuja MOU is indebted to the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Federal Ministry of Transport of Nigeria, who have always risen to its responsibilities as a host country of Abuja MOU in innumerable ways. We are obliged to the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency and the Nigerian Port Authority for their financial, technical, and operational support. The IMO, at the time I assumed leadership of this organization, promised that they will hold my hand. The IMO has kept its promise. Through the IMO, several port state control officers across the region have attended and benefited from foreign trainings. I have to pay tribute also to the great men in this audience who have contributed in very significant ways to the growth of the maritime industry in Nigeria.
Mrs. Usoro also paid glowing tribute to the governor of Akwa Ibom State, Chief Godswill Akpabio, for his role in facilitating the workshop. In his address, Governor Akpabio spoke eloquently about the strategic importance of the maritime industry to the development of regions and nations across the world.
We should also take comfort in the International Maritime Organization's session. I just want to quote the IMO's session, which says maritime transport is essential to the world's economy, as over 90% of the world's trade is carried by sea, and it is by far the most cost-effective way to move en masse goods and raw materials around the world. Maritime activity has a key role to play in the alleviation of extreme poverty and hunger, as it already provides an important source of income and employment for many developing countries, such as the supply of seagoing personnel and ship recycling, ship owning and operating, shipbuilding and repair, and port services, amongst others. Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, this horizon set out by the International Maritime Organization, I believe, remains our collective perspective.
Now, before we finally call it a wrap on today's edition, I am pleased to inform you that over here at Nimasa this week, we intend to make this show an interactive one. Therefore, your questions and comments are welcome, and we're more than pleased to answer any query you might have on Nimasa in particular or the maritime industry in general. You can forward your comments or questions to the email addresses showing on your screen. Now, till I see you again next week, I'm wishing you smooth sailing and bon voyage.